The fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across the worn wooden walls of the New Mexico cabin. Outside, December wind howled through the pines, but warmth held back the cold like a memory refusing to fade. Ethan Walker, 70 years old with silver hair and eyes the color of winter sky, sat in his father's old chair. His granddaughter Sarah perched on the ottoman before him, wrapped in a quilted blanket, her face illuminated by firelight and curiosity. "Grandpa," she said, her voice soft in the quiet room, "you've spent your whole life fighting for indigenous land rights. 50 years as a lawyer. But you never told me the whole story. Why you started." Ethan reached into the drawer of the side table. His weathered fingers, still steady despite their age, withdrew something wrapped in faded cloth. He unfolded it slowly, revealing a piece of leather no bigger than a playing card. The surface was worn smooth by decades of handling, but the symbol burned into it remained clear. A crescent moon with eagle wings spreading from its curves. "This," Ethan said, his voice carrying the weight of years and memory, "is called the Moonwing, the sacred mark of the Chiricahua Apache. And this is the story your great-grandfather Jesse Walker never wanted told, because he thought himself no hero, just a man paying a debt." Sarah leaned forward, firelight catching in her eyes. Ethan closed his own eyes, and when he spoke again, his voice transformed. Younger, harder. The voice of a man who'd heard this story from his father's own lips on a similar winter night 40 years gone. August 1884, Arizona Territory. My father was 29 years old. His heart was dying. His pockets held $31. Everything he'd ever built had turned to dust, and he'd just decided to spend every cent of that money to repay a debt 21 years old. The firelight seemed to flicker and shift, and in the dance of flame and shadow, the past awakened. The desert stretched in every direction like an ocean of fire. August sun hammered down from a sky bleached white with heat. 108 degrees, maybe more. The kind of heat that killed men and horses with equal indifference. Jesse Walker rode alone. His horse, an Appaloosa named Smoke, picked its way across the cracked red earth with the careful steps of an animal that understood survival. Jesse sat loose in the saddle, his body moving with the horse's rhythm in a way that spoke of decades spent riding. But his hand rested on his chest, feeling the irregular thump beneath his ribs. The shrapnel, 6 years lodged next to his heart, too close to remove. A gift from the Apache wars he'd deserted. Every doctor said the same thing. 2 years, maybe 3. Then the metal would shift, pierce something vital, and Jesse Walker would die in the middle of whatever he was doing. Probably alone, probably in pain. He'd made peace with that. What he hadn't made peace with was the emptiness. Catherine, his wife, dead 5 years from consumption. His son Ethan, 9 years old, living with Catherine's parents in Texas. The boy wouldn't speak to Jesse, couldn't forgive his father for all the absences, all the times Jesse had chosen anywhere else over home. The ranch in New Mexico, lost to drought and debt. 317 acres that Jesse had built with his own hands, sold for $800 to cover what he owed. $31 remained. Enough for a meal and a bottle, enough for 6 bullets and an end. Jesse reached into his vest pocket without looking. His fingers found what they always found. A piece of leather, 4 inches by 3, edges worn soft. He didn't need to look at it. He'd memorized every line of the symbol burned into its surface. The Moonwing, crescent moon with eagle wings. A voice whispered through his memory, deep, calm, accented with the rhythms of Apache speech. "Remember, white boy, a man's worth is measured by his choices when no one is watching." Jesse was 8 years old again, dying in the desert, tongue swollen, arrow wound festering in his shoulder. His parents' wagon train, destroyed by Comanche raiders. 3 days crawling through sand and stone, too young to know the proper way to die. Then hands, brown hands, calloused and strong, lifting a water skin to his cracked lips. Chief Silverhawk of the Chiricahua Apache, 38 years old then, hair already streaked with gray. Eyes that saw through skin and bone straight into the truth of things. Silverhawk had saved him, fed him, tended his wounds for 3 weeks in a hidden cave while his own people hunted white soldiers. And when Jesse was strong enough to travel, the chief had given him this piece of leather. "If you ever see this mark again," Silverhawk had said. You will know they are family to the man who gave you a second life. About 21 years Jesse had carried it, through marriage and war and loss and the slow erosion of everything that made life worth living. He was about to put it back in his pocket when gunfire cracked across the desert. 3 shots, rifle reports echoing off distant rock, then 2 more, pistol shots, different pitch. Smoke stamped and tossed his head. Jesse's hand went to his Colt by reflexes, but he didn't draw. Not his business. This territory was full of violence. Men killed each other over land, over water, over old grudges and new opportunities. A smart man kept riding. Jesse started to do exactly that, but Smoke wouldn't move. The horse stood planted, ears forward, as if listening to something Jesse couldn't hear. The leather charm slipped from Jesse's fingers, fell onto the saddle. The Moonwing symbol faced upward, catching the brutal sunlight. Silverhawk's voice again. Stronger now, almost real. A man's worth is measured by his choices when no one is watching. Damn it, Jesse said to the empty air, to the ghost of a chief 28 years dead. You never did let me rest easy. He turned Smoke toward the gunfire and kicked the horse into a gallop. 800 yards out, Jesse saw them through the shimmering heat. 3 men, white, dirty clothes, unshaven faces, the look of bounty hunters or worse, armed with Winchesters and belt guns. They were dismounted, walking slowly forward, rifles ready. Their target ran ahead of them. A woman, Apache, no question. Dark hair in a single braid down her back, buckskin dress with traditional beading. She was wounded. Blood darkened her left shoulder. She was out of the arrows, her quiver empty. Only a knife remained in her hand. Stop running, squaw, one of the hunters shouted. He was 30-ish, heavy-set, with a scar across his face that looked like it came from a knife years ago. Boss Crane pays $200 for black feather blood brought in alive. The woman stumbled, but didn't fall. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly despite her exhaustion. Sinajini ya. The Apache words were sharp as broken glass. Then in English, accent thick but understandable. I am daughter of Silverhawk. I do not kneel. Jesse's heart, that damaged and failing organ, suddenly beat so hard it hurt. Daughter of Silverhawk. The second hunter, younger and thinner, laughed. Don't care whose daughter you are. You're merchandise now. Crane's got plans for you and your sisters. Jesse was already moving. Smoke ate up the ground in powerful strides, hooves throwing up clouds of red dust. The hunters heard him coming, turned, rifles swinging around. Jesse reined in 40 feet away. Smoke danced sideways, fighting the bit, but Jesse held him steady with his knees. His hand rested on the butt of his Colt, not drawing yet, but ready. 3 grown men chasing 1 wounded woman, Jesse said. His voice was quiet, but it carried the flatness of a man who'd killed before and would do it again if necessary. Real brave. The scarred hunter spat tobacco juice. Ain't your business, stranger. Ride on. Just made it my business. The lady's under my protection now. The younger hunter grinned, showing teeth stained brown. Your protection? Who the hell are you? Jesse's eyes, pale and flat as weathered stone, moved from face to face. Someone who doesn't like cowards. The scarred hunter's hand tightened on his rifle. Jesse moved first. His draw was smooth, practiced, the result of 20 years carrying a gun. The Colt came up and fired in one motion. The first shot took the scarred hunter in his right shoulder, spinning him around and dropping the rifle from his hands. The man screamed and went down. The second hunter fired his Winchester, but he rushed the shot. The bullet whined past Jesse's ear, close enough to feel the heat. Jesse's second shot caught the man in his left thigh. He collapsed, howling. The third hunter, younger than the others, tried to flank left. A knife flew through the air and buried itself in his right thigh. He screamed and stumbled. The Apache woman had thrown it. Even wounded, even exhausted, her aim was true. All 3 hunters were down and bleeding. The young one managed to crawl to his horse and pull himself into the saddle. The other 2 followed, clutching their wounds. They rode off at a hard gallop, leaving a trail of blood and curses. Jesse didn't pursue. He never killed unless he had to. He'd seen enough death to last several lifetimes. He dismounted and walked to where the Apache woman had collapsed. She was conscious but fading, her face pale beneath the sun-darkened bronze of her skin. The wound on her shoulder was bleeding freely. Dehydration hollowed her cheeks and darkened her eyes. Jesse knelt beside her. He opened his canteen and held it to her lips. She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes, dark as obsidian and just as hard, fixed on his face with suspicion and exhaustion in equal measure. "Wait." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why you help? White soldiers killed my people." "Not all white men are soldiers," Jesse said. "Drink." She drank slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. Jesse used the water to clean her wound, then tore a strip from his shirt to bind it. Yisa, the shoulder wound was a graze, painful and bleeding, but not fatal. As he worked, he noticed something. A scar on her left shoulder, partially hidden by the blood, shaped like a crescent moon. Jesse's hands froze. The woman saw his reaction. "It is mark of my bloodline, Chief's family. Why you stare?" Jesse reached into his vest with shaking hands, drew out the leather charm, held it where she could see, the Moonwing symbol, identical to her scar. "Because," Jesse said, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't name, 21 years ago, a Chiricahua chief saved an 8-year-old boy lost in this desert. Before he left, he gave the boy this. Said if I ever saw this mark again, I'd know they were family. The woman's eyes went wide. Her hand, still bloody, reached up to touch the tattoo on her right wrist. The same symbol, inked in traditional Apache style. "The symbol of Moonwing," she breathed. "My father spoke of you. The white boy with blue eyes who survived alone 3 days. He said you had warrior spirit in wrong-colored skin." Jesse felt something crack open in his chest. Not his heart, though that ached too. Something deeper. "Your father," he said. "Chief Silverhawk. Where is he?" Her face hardened. Pain flashed in her eyes, but also rage, carefully controlled. "Dead. Murdered 3 months ago by a land thief named Silas Crane. And Crane did not stop with killing my father. He took my 5 sisters, sold them like cattle. I have hunted 3 months and found nothing but laws and cold trails." Jesse looked at her, really looked. She was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 26, 27, beautiful in the way of Apache women, with high cheekbones and a mouth that looked like it knew how to laugh, even though it was set in a hard line now. Strong despite her injuries. Her father's daughter in every way that mattered. "What's your name?" Jesse asked. Nala Silverhawk. "Jesse Walker, and I owe your father everything." "What do you need?" Nala's eyes narrowed. "What? What do you need to get your sisters back?" "Your father gave me my life when I had no right to it. I owe that debt, so tell me what you need." Nala studied him for a long moment. Jesse had the distinct feeling she was seeing past his skin, past his words, straight down to the truth of him, just like her father had all those years ago. Finally, she spoke. "I need guns. I need someone who knows white man's ways. I need a warrior who will not run when blood is shed." Jesse stood and offered her his hand. "I'm not a hero, Nala. I'm a broken-down cowboy with a bad heart and a worse past. Yeah, but I keep my debts." She took his hand. Her grip was iron. "Then we have deal, Jesse Walker. But know this, I lead, you follow. This is Apache fight." Jesse actually smiled, the first real smile in months. "Fair enough. No." They made camp under a cluster of mesquite trees as the sun died in the west. Jesse started a small fire and cooked a jackrabbit he'd shot earlier. Nala sat with her back against a rock, drinking water slowly, letting her body recover. "Tell me," Jesse said as he turned the rabbit on its spit. "Tell me about your sisters, about Crane." Nala's face became a mask, but she spoke. "My father, Chief Silverhawk, owned 2,400 acres near the Gila River in New Mexico Territory. Good land, water rights, registered in 1868 under the Homestead Act, worth $12,000, maybe more." Jesse whistled low. That was serious money. "Railroad companies want it?" "Yes, but the land is legally ours. Papers filed, signed, witnessed. Crane cannot steal it unless there are no legal heirs to challenge the claim." Nala nodded. "Exactly. So 3 months ago, Crane came to our village. He had 40 men. They attacked at dawn. My father tried to stop them. Crane shot him into the back while he was trying to negotiate. Her voice didn't waver, but Jesse saw her hands clench. Before my father died, he gave us the Moonwing tattoos. All 6 daughters. He told us someone would see the mark and remember. Someone who owed a debt. She looked at Jesse. He meant you. Jesse felt the weight of that settle on his shoulders. Silverhawk had planned this. Even dying, the old chief had been thinking 3 moves ahead. Your sisters, Jesse said. Where are they now? Separated. Crane is smart. Kiona, my eldest sister, she is 20. With her is Yazi, youngest at 12. They are held at Crane's ranch in a place called Devil's Rim, 40 miles northeast of here. 2 guards on them always. 15 men total in the camp. And the others? Winona is 18. Ayana is 16. They were sold to Mexican slavers 3 weeks ago, taken south to Sonora. And Chenoa. Nahla's voice finally broke slightly. Chenoa is 14. Crane is holding her in Tucson. He plans to sell her at auction on September 3rd, 9 days from now. Jesse poked the fire with a stick, thinking. 3 locations, 5 women. Crane had scattered them like seeds to make rescue impossible. What does Crane get out of this? Jesse asked. Besides the land? He has a deal with the railroad companies. They will pay him $50,000 for our land, but only if the title is clean. No heirs to challenge, no legal claims. So he kills your father, kidnaps all 6 daughters, sells or kills them, then files false documents claiming the land was legally transferred. Yes, and he has connections. The sheriff in Tucson works for him, judges in Santa Fe, even some army officers. Jesse was quiet for a moment. Then he said, There's something else you're not telling me. Nala looked at him sharply. What makes you say that? Because Crane could have just killed all of you. Simpler, but he's keeping you alive, selling you. Why? Nala's jaw tightened. Because Crane is building something worse than land theft. He takes Apache children young, 8, 9, 10 years old, raises them himself, trains them as soldiers loyal only to him. 15 children over 10 years. 3 of them are from my father's own tribe. He turned them against their families. Jesse felt cold despite the fire. So they can attack other Apache tribes, make it look like tribal warfare. Then the army comes in, pacifies everyone, and the land is declared abandoned. Legal seizure. Crane has been doing this for years. Our land is just the biggest prize yet. Jesse stared into the fire. Silas Crane wasn't just a land thief. He was a monster. A smart monster with resources and a long-term plan. Tomorrow, Jesse said, we go to Red Mesa Trading Post, gather information, find out exactly where Devil's Rim is and how to get in. Then we get Kiona and Yazi out first. What about Winona and Ayana in Mexico? What about Chenoa? One step at a time. We save who we can save when we can save them. Otherwise, we save nobody. Nala looked at him for a long moment. You have done this before. Rescued people. It wasn't a question, but Jesse answered anyway. Not people. Soldiers. Different kind of rescue. He paused. I was cavalry for 12 years. Did things I'm not proud of. Saw things that still wake me at night. Your people suffered because of men like me. I can't change that, but maybe I can balance the scales a little. This is why you help. Guilt, debt. Does it matter? Your father saved my life. I'm here to repay that. Everything else is just details. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. The desert night grew cold. Finally, Nala spoke again. Jesse Walker, you should know something. My father told me about you every year on the anniversary of saving you, May 3rd. He would sit by the fire and tell us about the white boy who could have chosen hate, but chose gratitude instead. He said you were proof that some bridges can be built between our peoples. Jesse felt his throat tighten. Your father was a better man than me. Perhaps, but you are the man who came today. That is what matters. Shut. Red Mesa Trading Post squatted in the desert like a collection of broken teeth. 12 buildings, all wood, all weathered gray by sun and wind. Population maybe 80 souls, most of them white ranchers, a handful of Mexican laborers, a few Apache servants who kept their eyes down and their mouths shut. Jesse and Nala rode in at dawn. She wore his spare shirt over her buckskin dress, but her features were unmistakably Apache. People stared. Jesse ignored them. They stopped at the saloon, the Dusty Rose. Jesse tied Smoke to the hitching post and told Nala to wait. "Why do I wait?" she asked, voice sharp. "Because white men in that saloon won't talk if Apache is present. You know this." She did know it, but that didn't mean she liked it. Jesse pushed through the batwing doors. The saloon smelled of whiskey and sweat and tobacco smoke. 15 men drinking at 10 in the morning. Jesse walked to the bar. The bartender was old, maybe 60, with 3 fingers missing from his left hand. An accident with farm equipment years ago from the look of it. He studied Jesse with the careful neutrality of a man who'd learned to read strangers fast. "What can I get you?" Jesse laid a $5 silver piece on the bar, more than the price of any drink. "Information about Apache girls sold recently." The bartender's eyes flicked to the silver, then back to Jesse's face. "That's dangerous talk, friend. I pay for dangerous information." The bartender swept the coin into his palm with practiced speed. His voice dropped low. "Crane took 6 Black Feather sisters 3 months back. 2 he's holding at Devil's Rim. 2 got sold to Mexican slavers, headed down Sonora way. 1 he's keeping in Tucson for some kind of auction. The 6th one, I heard she escaped. Bounty hunters have been looking for her ever since." Jesse's jaw tightened. The escaped one was Nahla, which meant 5 were still captive, scattered across hundreds of miles. "Where's Devil's Rim?" 40 miles northeast. Canyon country. Crane's got a fortified ranch up there. Maybe 15 guns. You ride in there, you don't ride out. I need exact directions." The bartender pulled a napkin and a stub of pencil from under the bar, drew a rough map. "Follow this trail past Red Rock Mesa. Look for the canyon with 3 fingers pointing south. That's Devil's Rim. But I'm telling you plain, mister, Crane ain't someone to mess with. He's killed a dozen men last year. Legal and otherwise. Got connections with the territorial sheriff." Jesse left $2 more on the bar as tip. "Appreciate the honesty." He was almost to the door when a voice called out behind him. "Wait!" Jesse turned. A young man, early 20s, stood in the alley doorway. Brown hair, scared eyes, thin frame. He held a pistol but didn't point it. "You're asking about Crane's captives," the young man said. His voice shook slightly. "You're planning something stupid." Jesse's hand moved to his Colt. "Who are you?" "Marcus Hayes. I worked for Crane. Quit 2 weeks ago after he killed my brother for asking too many questions." Marcus's voice cracked. "Don't go to Devil's Rim. It's a trap." Nala appeared from the shadows behind Marcus. She moved silently as Smoke, a knife in her hand pressed to Marcus's back. "Explain," she said, voice flat. "Or die." Marcus went very still. "I'm trying to help. Crane isn't just stealing land. He's building an army. Apache children kidnapped young, raised to be loyal only to him. He plans to use them to attack other tribes, make it look like tribal warfare. Then the cavalry comes in, clears everyone out, and Crane gets the land legally declared abandoned." "How many children?" Nala's knife pressed harder. 15, ages 8 to 23. 3 of them are Chiricahua, your people." Marcus swallowed hard. "My brother found out. He was going to report it to the territorial marshal. Crane shot him in the back and made it look like an Apache raid." Jesse studied the young man's face. Fear, yes, but also guilt and shame and desperate need for redemption. He'd seen that look before in young soldiers who'd done terrible things and wanted a chance to balance the scales. "You have names?" Jesse asked. "The Chiricahua children?" "2 names I know for sure. One is called Swiftbird now, but his real name is Daniel Whitehawk. He's 18. Crane took him when he was 8 years old and renamed him. His mother, Diving Hawk, she's still alive. Been searching for her son for 10 years. The other one is a girl named Pale Moon, maybe 15 now. Don't know her birth name." Nala lowered the knife. "Diving Hawk is my aunt. We thought Daniel died as a child. He didn't die. Crane took him, broke him, rebuilt him into something else." Marcus turned to face them both. "I want to help. I owe my brother that much. Let me show you how to get into Devil's Rim without being seen." Jesse and Nahala exchanged a look. Finally, Jesse nodded. You try to betray us, you die fast, understand? I understand. They met in an abandoned mining shack 2 miles outside town. Marcus spread a blanket on the floor and used a stick to draw in the dust. Devil's Rim is a natural fortress. Canyon walls on 3 sides. Only one road in. Crane's got the ranch house here, 40 by 30 feet, 2 stories. He sleeps on the 2nd floor with 3 bodyguards. Bunkhouse here, 20 by 40, holds 10 to 12 men. Prisoner shed is here, 10 by 10, where he keeps the 2 girls. 2 guards on them 24/7. Jesse studied the crude map. Perimeter guards? 4 rotating every 4 hours. But there's another way in. Marcus drew a line beneath the ranch. Old silver mine from the 60s. Cave system runs right under the compound. Connects to the cellar of the prisoner shed. Is it stable? Mostly some cave-ins over the years, but the main tunnel is solid. Show me the entrance. Marcus drew an X 2 miles south of the ranch. Hidden in a mesquite grove, you'll need a lantern. And luck. Jesse turned to Nala. We go in tomorrow night, midnight. You create a distraction, something loud. Stampede their horses. Start a fire. While Crane's men are dealing with that, Marcus and I go through the caves, extract your sisters through the cellar, and we all meet at Red Mesa 48 hours later. Nala shook her head. No, I go through the caves. You create the distraction. You're injured. I need my sisters to see a familiar face when they wake terrified in the dark. I need to be the one who breaks their chains. Her eyes were hard as flint. I did not ask permission, cowboy. I told you my decision. Jesse started to argue, then stopped. She was right. The sisters would trust her. They didn't know him. All right, he said, but if things go wrong, you run. Don't wait for us. Get your sisters out and ride hard for Red Mesa. If things go wrong, Nayla said softly, we all die together. That is the Apache way. Marcus cleared his throat. There's something else you should know. The guards on the prisoner shed. One of them is Apache, a boy named Swiftbird, one of the children Crane raised. Nala's face went still. If we attack, we might have to kill our own people. Yes. The weight of that hung in the air like smoke. Finally, Jesse spoke. Then we find another way. We don't kill children. Not even children who've been turned into weapons. They spent the rest of the day preparing, checking weapons, gathering supplies, planning contingencies. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Jesse felt his chest tighten. The familiar pressure, the irregular beat, his heart reminding him it was on borrowed time. He stepped outside the shack, away from the others, drew the small bottle of digitalis from his vest and drank 3 drops, waited for the medicine to steady his pulse. Nala found him there. She approached silently, her healer's eyes seeing what he tried to hide. Your heart, she said. It wasn't a question. It's dying, has been for years, shrapnel from the war, too close to remove. How long? Months, maybe weeks, hard to say. Nala was quiet for a moment, then, you should go home, spend what time remains with your son. Jesse looked at the desert, at the mountains dark against the sunset. I will, after I pay my debt. This is not just debt anymore, Jesse Walker. Then what is it? She didn't answer. Instead, she placed her hand on his shoulder. The gesture was brief, almost formal, but Jesse felt the weight of it. Acceptance, trust, partnership. Get some rest, Nala said. Tomorrow night we walk into fire. I want you alive for it. She had. They approached Devil's Rim under a moon 3 days past full, bright enough to see by, dark enough to hide movement. Jesse, Marcus, and Nala rode single file, leading a spare horse. The cave entrance was exactly where Marcus said it would be, hidden behind a thick stand of mesquite. They dismounted. Jesse and Marcus checked their gear one final time. Colt pistols loaded, 6 rounds each. Winchester rifles, 12 rounds each. Rope, knives, lantern, matches, water. Nala would split off here. She'd circle north to the ranch, wait for the guard change at midnight, then stampede the horses and set the hay pile afire. The chaos would last maybe 10 minutes, long enough for Jesse and Marcus to get in, free the sisters, and get out. If everything went perfectly. Nothing ever went perfectly. Nala faced Jesse in the moonlight. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she placed her hand over his, brief as a bird landing. If I do not return, tell Kiona I fought well. Or you'll tell her yourself. Her smile was small and sad. You honor my father's memory, Jesse Walker. Then she was gone, vanishing into the darkness like smoke and wind. Jesse watched the space where she'd been, feeling something shift in his chest. Not his failing heart this time. Something deeper. She's quite a woman, Marcus said quietly. Yeah, Jesse said, she is. They entered the cave. The first chamber was pstisha, 15 feet to the ceiling, stable rock. Bats clung to the shadows above, disturbed by the lantern light. Their wings whispered like dry leaves as they shifted and resettled. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, a steady pulse like a heartbeat. Marcus led the way. He'd been through these caves before, sneaking supplies to Crane's men when bad weather closed the main road. He knew the way. The tunnel narrowed after 100 feet, down to 3 feet wide, barely tall enough to crawl through. Marcus went first. Jesse followed, the lantern in front of him, Winchester strapped to his back. The walls pressed close. Jesse had been buried alive once during the war, pinned under a collapsed trench while shells exploded overhead. The memory tried to claw its way up from where he'd buried it. He pushed it back down, focused on breathing, on moving forward. You all right back there? Marcus called. Fine. Keep moving. They emerged into the second chamber. This one was smaller, maybe 50 feet across, but the ceiling was high, and running through it was an underground stream, 4 feet deep, water so cold it made Jesse's teeth ache just looking at it. We have to cross, Marcus said. Hold your rifle high. Current strong. They waded in. The cold hit like a physical blow. Jesse gasped despite himself. The water pushed at his legs, trying to sweep him downstream into the dark. He planted his feet carefully, testing each step before committing his weight. Marcus slipped, went under briefly, came up sputtering. Jesse grabbed him, steadied him, and they pushed on. On the far side, shivering and dripping, Marcus paused. Jesse, can I ask you something? Now? Yeah, now, because if we die in the next hour, I want to know. Marcus looked at Jesse in the lantern light, his young face suddenly older. You were cavalry. I can tell from the way you move, the way you check corners. You killed Apache during the war, didn't you? Jesse was quiet for a long time, then, yes. Do you regret it? Every day. But regret doesn't bring back the dead. Only action can balance blood. That's why I'm here. Marcus nodded slowly. My brother used to say something similar. Before Crane killed him. They moved on. The third chamber brought them directly beneath the ranch. They could hear voices above, muffled by layers of wood and earth. The lantern showed a ladder, iron rungs bolted to the stone, climbing 20 feet to a wooden trapdoor. Marcus climbed first. At the top, he pressed his ear to the trapdoor, listening. Then he tried the handle, locked from above. Jesse climbed up beside him, drew his knife and worked the blade into the crack between door and frame. The lock was simple, just a sliding bolt. It took 5 minutes of careful work, and Jesse's hands were bleeding by the time he felt the bolt slide free. They pushed the trapdoor open an inch. Darkness above, the smell of earth and potatoes. They were in a root cellar. Jesse and Marcus climbed through and stood in the darkness, letting their eyes adjust. Voices filtered down from above, guards talking. Crane says double the watch tonight. Thinks someone might try something. Let them try. We got 15 guns in a canyon. Nobody's getting in. The voices moved away. Jesse and Marcus crept up the cellar stairs. At the top, Jesse pressed his eye to a crack in the door. He could see the prisoner's shed outside, maybe 40 feet away. Small building, rough lumber, bars on the single window. 2 guards stood outside, one young, maybe 17, the other older, maybe 30. Both armed with rifles. The young guard was Apache, Swiftbird probably. Even from here, Jesse could see the conflict in the boy's posture. The way he held himself like a soldier but couldn't quite kill the uncertainty in his eyes. Jesse turned to Marcus. I'll take the left guard. You take Swiftbird. Quiet, no shooting unless we have to. They slipped out of the cellar through a different door, one that opened behind the prisoner's shed, circled around in the darkness. The moon had set. Good. Darkness was their ally now. Jesse approached from behind. The older guard never heard him. Jesse's arm went around the man's throat, cutting off his air and the blood to his brain simultaneously. The guard struggled for maybe 8 seconds, then went limp. Not dead, just unconscious. Jesse lowered him silently to the ground. Marcus moved on Swiftbird, but Marcus was nervous, inexperienced. He fumbled his approach. Swiftbird started to turn, started to raise his rifle, started to yell. Jesse's knife flew. It was instinct, pure reflex from 20 years of staying alive. The blade took Swiftbird in the shoulder, spinning him around and dropping the rifle from his hands. The boy gasped but didn't scream. Jesse was on him in 2 steps, hand over his mouth. "Easy," Jesse whispered in Apache, a language he'd learned during the war. "Easy, young warrior. We're not here to hurt you." Swiftbird's eyes were wide with shock and pain, but he didn't fight. Maybe because of the knife in his shoulder. Maybe because something in Jesse's voice reached through the years of Crane's conditioning. "We're taking the Black Feather Sisters," Jesse said, still in Apache. "You can raise the alarm, or you can let us pass. Your choice, but know this, your real family is looking for you." A woman named Diving Hawk, your aunt. She never stopped searching. Something flickered in Swiftbird's eyes. Confusion. Memory trying to surface through the wall Crane had built around it. Marcus appeared with rope. They tied Swiftbird quickly, but not cruelly, gagged him with cloth. The boy watched them with those confused eyes as they carried him into the prisoner shed. Inside, 2 cots, 2 young women chained to the wall. The older one, maybe 20, looked like Nala. Same high cheekbones, same dark eyes. But where Nala's face was hard with anger, this woman's face was gentle even in fear. Kiona. The younger one was maybe 12, small and thin, her hair cut short and ragged. She looked at Jesse and Marcus with eyes that held terror, but also a fierce refusal to break. "Yazi." "Who are you?" Kiona asked, her voice weak with fever. Jesse drew his bolt cutters and began working on her chains. "Friends of your sister Nala, we're getting you out." Yazi's eyes went huge. "Nala, Nala, she's alive? Crane said she was dead." "She's very much alive and very angry." The chain broke. Jesse moved to Yazi. "Can you walk?" "I can run if I have to." Kiona tried to stand. Her left leg gave out. Jesse saw the infected wound, recognized the smell of rot. She'd been whipped, and the wounds had festered. "I'll carry her," Marcus said. They exited the shed, started back toward the cellar. And that's when everything went to hell. An explosion, loud from the north side of the ranch. Then gunfire, horses screaming. Nala's distraction, but it was wrong timing. It was supposed to be 15 minutes from now, after they were clear of the camp. The ranch erupted. Men poured from the bunkhouse, half-dressed, grabbing weapons. Someone rang a bell, loud and frantic. Flames rose from the hay pile, lighting the night orange and red. Jesse and Marcus were 40 feet from the cellar when 3 ranch hands ran past, heading for the prisoner shed. They saw the empty building. Absalom saw Jesse and Marcus with the 2 women. "Prisoners escaped! They're here!" The alarm bell changed rhythm. Now everyone knew. Jesse shoved Yazi toward Marcus. "Run! Get to the cellar! I'll cover you!" He turned and brought up his Winchester. The 3 ranch hands were raising their rifles. Jesse fired first. 3 shots, 3 seconds. The first man went down with a bullet through his chest. The second took one to the leg and collapsed screaming. The third dove for cover. More men coming. At least 8, maybe 10. This wasn't a rescue anymore. This was a fight. Jesse fired again and again, laying down covering fire. Marcus disappeared into the cellar with both sisters. Good. Get them out. That's all that mattered. A bullet cracked past Jesse's head, close enough to feel. He dove behind a water trough. Return fire came from everywhere, bullets punching holes in the wood, water leaking out in streams. Then Nala appeared. She came riding in on a huge black horse, Crane's own stallion from the look of it, firing arrows while the horse galloped. Her aim was impossible, perfect, deadly. 2 men went down before they even saw her coming. "Jesse!" she screamed. "This way!" Jesse ran. Bullets chased him, kicking up dirt at his heels. Nala pulled alongside. reached down. Jesse grabbed her arm and swung up behind her in one motion. The black horse didn't even slow. They were racing for the canyon entrance when Silas Crane stepped out of the ranch house. Jesse had never seen the man before, but he knew him instantly. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long black coat despite the summer heat. He held a shotgun like it was part of his arm. His face was weathered, hard, the face of a man who'd killed many times and slept well afterward. "You think you can steal my property?" Crane's voice carried clearly over the chaos. "I'll kill every one of you!" He raised the shotgun and fired. The buckshot spread caught Marcus in the back. Jesse heard the young man scream, saw him stumble and fall. Kiona and Yazi went down with him, tangled in his arms. Jesse tried to turn the horse, but Nahela grabbed his hands. "No, leave him. We go now. He's dying. We're all dying if we stay." Jesse saw Marcus on the ground, saw the blood spreading across his back, saw Kiona trying to crawl to him, saw Yazi crying, saw Crane reloading the shotgun. Every instinct screamed at Jesse to go back. But Nahla was right. If they stayed, they all died. Jesse made the choice, the hardest choice. He kicked the black horse forward. They scooped up Yazi in one motion, but Kiona was too far, and Marcus was going limp. Jesse wheeled the horse and charged back anyway. Nala screamed something in Apache, but Jesse ignored her. He rode straight at Crane, drawing his Colt as he came. Crane fired. Buckshot sprayed. 3 pellets caught Jesse in his right side, burning lines of fire. But he didn't fall. He fired back, 3 shots, forcing Crane to dive for cover. In that moment, Jesse reached Marcus. "Can you ride?" Marcus coughed at blood. "I don't think so." Jesse grabbed him anyway, hauled him up with strength born of pure, desperate will. His heart screamed in protest, but he didn't care. He got Marcus across the saddle, got Kiona up behind, wrapped his own arm around them both to keep them from falling. Nala appeared with 2 more stolen horses. Yazi on one, Swift Bird on the other. The Apache boy had broken free of his bonds and chosen a side. They rode hard for the canyon entrance. Behind them, Crane's voice echoed like a curse. "I'll find you! You can't hide! I'll kill every one of you!" 15 men on horses poured out of Devil's Rim in pursuit. Gunfire lit up the night. Bullets zipped pacing out, too many too close. One caught Jesse's horse in the haunch. The animal screamed but kept running. They made it to the canyon mouth, made it into the open desert. Behind them, the pursuit continued, but the horses were fresher, faster. They pulled ahead. Jesse looked back once, saw Devil's Rim burning, saw Crane's silhouette against the flames, saw the man raise his fist in rage. Then they were swallowed by darkness and distance. The fire had burned down to coals when Ethan paused in his telling. Sarah sat unmoving, barely breathing, her eyes locked on his face. "Marcus," she whispered. "Did he die?" Ethan reached for his coffee and took a slow sip. His hands, steady through the whole story, shook slightly now, the weight of memory. "That's the question, isn't it?" he said softly. "And that's where the story gets harder, because my father made a choice that night, a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life." He looked at Sarah. "Do you want me to continue? It gets darker from here." "Yes," Sarah said immediately. "I need to know how it ends." "It doesn't end," Ethan said. "Not really. These kinds of stories, they don't have endings, just places where we stop telling them." He stood, added another log to the fire. Sparks swirled up the chimney like fireflies. Outside, the wind had died. Snow was falling now, silent and heavy. "All right," Ethan said, settling back into his chair. "Then let me tell you about the 3 days that followed, about how my father learned that some debts can never be fully paid, and about a woman named Nala Silverhawk who taught him that honor isn't about winning. It's about choosing to stand when running would be easier." The leather charm lay on the table between them, the Moonwing symbol catching the firelight. A promise kept, a debt acknowledged, a story still unfolding. And in the dance of flame and shadow, the past reached forward to touch the present one more time. The cabin fell silent except for the crackle of burning wood. Sarah pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders, her eyes never leaving her grandfather's face. Ethan held the leather charm in his weathered hands, turning it slowly as if the symbol itself could unlock the memories he was about to share. 3 days, he said quietly. That's how long they ran. 3 days of bleeding, dying, and discovering that sometimes the hardest battles aren't the ones you fight with guns. He closed his eyes, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of a story told from his father's own lips decades ago. They rode through the night, 6 horses, carrying 6 people through a landscape that wanted them dead. The desert cold bit deep after midnight, the kind of cold that makes wounds ache and exhaustion turn to something worse. Behind them, dust clouds marked Crane's pursuit. Ahead, nothing but miles of stone and sand. Jesse clung to consciousness by force of will alone. The buckshot wounds in his side burned like brands. Blood soaked his shirt, warm at first, then cooling, then cold. Marcus lay across the saddle in front of him, breathing in shallow gasps. Each breath bubbled wetly, which meant lung damage, which meant Marcus was dying. Nala rode point, her stolen black stallion setting a punishing pace. Yazi rode behind her, small arms wrapped tight around Nahala's waist. Swiftbird, the young Apache who'd chosen freedom over Crane's conditioning, brought up the rear on a rangy bay mare. And Kiona, feverish and weak, somehow managed to stay in her saddle through sheer stubbornness. They rode until the horses were stumbling. Then they rode further. At dawn, Nahala finally called a halt in a narrow canyon 15 miles from Devil's Rim. Water trickled from a crack in the rock, forming a small pool. The horses drank desperately. The people collapsed. Jesse lowered Marcus to the ground as gently as he could. The young man's back was a mess of blood and torn flesh. 3 buckshot pellets had hit him. One in the upper left shoulder blade, one in the lower right rib cage, one along his spine. The spine shot was the killer. Jesse had seen enough wounds to know. Nala knelt beside them, her healer's hands moving over Marcus with practiced efficiency. She didn't waste time with false hope. He needs a doctor. A real doctor, not field medicine. Nearest doctor is Fort Whipple, Jesse said. His voice sounded distant in his own ears. 40 miles west. He won't make it. Marcus coughed. Blood flecked his lips. Jesse, listen. Need to tell you something about Crane's plan. Jesse leaned close. Save your strength. No. Marcus grabbed Jesse's wrist with surprising force. Crane isn't working alone. He has partners, railroad barons. They want the land for the transcontinental expansion. They'll pay him $50,000 for Chiricahua territory, but only if there's no legal heirs to challenge. Nala's face went hard as stone. So he kills all of Chief Silverhawk's bloodline. Worse. Marcus coughed again, harder. He's going to use the kidnapped Apache children to attack nearby tribes. Make it look like tribal warfare. Then the army comes in, pacifies everyone, and the land is legally abandoned. He's targeting 6 tribes, Chiricahua, Navajo, Paiute. 3 months timeline. Jesse felt something cold settle in his gut. This wasn't just murder. This was genocide. Systematic, calculated, funded by men in Eastern boardrooms who'd never seen the blood they were paying for. How many people? Jesse asked. Marcus's eyes were losing focus. Thousands, maybe more. Crane's been planning this for 5 years. Your land is just the final piece. He coughed once more, violent and wet. Then his eyes went distant. His grip on Jesse's wrist loosened. Marcus, Jesse said, stay with me. But Marcus Hayes was already gone, 22 years old, dead trying to balance his brother's murder with one act of redemption. Jesse closed the young man's eyes with his own blood-stained fingers. They buried Marcus in a shallow grave marked with stones. Swiftbird sang a death chant in Apache, words that Marcus probably couldn't hear but needed to be said anyway. Kiona wept quietly. Yashi stood rigid, her young face trying to process another death in a life that had already seen too many. Nala didn't cry. She simply placed her hand on the grave and spoke words in Chiricahua that Jesse didn't understand. Then she turned away. We cannot stay, she said. Crane will track us. Jesse tried to stand. The world tilted sideways. He caught himself against a rock, but his vision was graying at the edges. The buckshot wounds weren't fatal, but combined with his failing heart, they were enough. He felt Nahala's hands on him, supporting him. Jesse, when did you last take your medicine? Yesterday morning, before we left. You need it now. Jesse reached for the digitalis bottle in his vest. His hand shook so badly he couldn't work the cap. Nala took it from him, measured 3 drops onto her palm, held it to his lips. He drank. The bitter taste flooded his mouth. He waited for his heart to stabilize, for the arrhythmia to calm. It didn't. Instead, pain exploded in his chest. Not the usual ache. This was different. Crushing, like a horse was standing on his ribcage. His left arm went numb. The world contracted to a point of light. He was dying, the shrapnel had finally shifted. Or his heart had simply given out. Either way, this was the end he'd been expecting for 6 years. Nala's voice came from far away. "Jesse, stay with me. Jesse." Then darkness took him. When Jesse opened his eyes, he was lying on his back staring at stars. His chest ached like he'd been kicked by a mule, but the crushing pain was gone. He could breathe. His heart beat irregularly but steadily. He turned his head. Nala sat beside him, her hand on his chest, still and watchful. On her other side, Kiona sat grinding herbs in a small stone bowl. The smell was sharp and medicinal. "What happened?" Jesse's voice was a rasp. "Your heart stopped," Nala said simply. "For maybe 30 seconds. I brought you back." "How?" "Apache medicine." And stubbornness. She held up a small leather pouch. "Hawthorn berries. They strengthen the heart muscle. My father taught me." Jesse tried to sit up. Nala pushed him back down with one hand. "You rest. We have time." "Crane is hunting us." "Let him hunt. He will find nothing but empty desert for now. I hit our trail. It will take him a day at least to pick it up again." Jesse looked at her in the starlight. Her face was streaked with dust and dried blood. Her shoulder wound had reopened during the ride. She was exhausted, probably in pain, but her eyes remained clear and focused. "Why back?" Jesse asked. "Why bring me back? You could have left me, taken your sisters, and gone." Nala's expression didn't change. "Because you could have left Marcus to die. You could have ridden away and saved yourself, but you didn't. That debt needed answering. I thought I owed you the debt. Perhaps we are even now." Jesse almost smiled. "Not even close." He forced himself to sit up despite Nala's protest. His side screamed where the buckshot had torn through, but the wounds were bandaged now. Kiona's work, probably. The girl had her sister's skill with healing. Around them, the small camp had settled into wary rest. Yazi slept curled against a rock, Kiona beside her. Swiftbird sat on watch, his young face serious, a rifle across his knees. The boy had barely spoken since they'd fled Devil's Rim, processing a lifetime of lies in the span of hours. "How long was I out?" Jesse asked. 4 hours. It's past midnight now." 4 hours. In that time, Crane could have closed the distance considerably. They needed to move. "Where are we, Beme?" Jesse asked her. 20 miles from Devil's Rim, 15 miles from Red Mesa. But we cannot go to Red Mesa. Too obvious. Crane will have men there." "Then where?" Nala pulled a crude map from her pouch and spread it on the ground. By starlight, Jesse could make out the major landmarks. Devil's Rim to the northeast, Red Mesa to the south, Fort Whipple to the west, and to the east, a narrow canyon system marked with Apache symbols. "Echo Valley," Nala said, "sacred ground to my people. Narrow approaches, high walls, defensible positions. If Crane follows us there, we make our stand." Jesse studied the map. Echo Valley was a tactical nightmare for attackers, but it was also a trap. Once inside, there was only one way out. If we go in there and they bottle us up, we die. "We are already dying," Nala said simply. "You from your heart, Kiona from infection, all of us from exhaustion and wounds. At least in Echo Valley, we choose the ground. We fight on our terms." Jesse knew she was right. They couldn't keep running, not with Kiona's condition worsening, not with his heart ready to quit at any moment. They needed to end this, one way or another. "All right," he said, "Echo Valley, but first we need help." "What help?" "There is no one." "There's someone. Your aunt. Diving Hawk. Swiftbird said she's been searching for her son for 10 years. Jesse looked at the young Apache warrior sitting watch. If she's still looking, she's still in this territory. And if she's still looking, she knows how to survive. We need that knowledge. Nala considered this. Then she called softly to Swiftbird. The boy approached, moving silently despite his size. "Swift bird," Nayla said in Apache. "Do you remember your mother?" The boy's face twisted with confusion and pain. "I remember. Pieces. A song she sang. The smell of tanemeti, a feeling of being safe." His voice broke. "Crane said she abandoned me, that she stopped looking, that I was nothing to her." "He lied," Nala said gently. "Diving Hawk never stopped. She has crossed this territory 100 times searching for you. She is your blood, and blood does not forget." Tears ran down Swiftbird's face. He was 18 years old but looked younger in that moment, a boy who'd been stolen and broken and was just now remembering what he'd lost. "Where would she be?" Jesse asked. "There is a place," Swiftbird said slowly. "A camp where Apache families gather, where mothers of stolen children come to share information, to pray, to hope. It is 2 days' ride from here, near the Gila River." Nala and Jesse exchanged glances. 2 days was too long. But if Diving Hawk had knowledge, had resource, had allies, it might be worth the risk. "We rest until dawn," Jesse decided. "Then we ride for the gathering place. If Crane catches us before we get there, we fight. If we make it, we ask for help. Either way, this ends at Echo Valley." No one argued. They were too tired for argument. One by one, they settled into restless sleep, taking turns on watch. Jesse took the last shift before dawn. He sat with his Winchester across his knees, listening to the desert night, coyotes in the distance, wind moving through stone, the rasp of his own breathing. His chest ached, but the pain was manageable now. Nala's medicine had bought him time. How much time, he couldn't say. Days, maybe. Weeks if he was lucky. Long enough to see this through. That was all that mattered. As the sky began to lighten in the east, Nala woke and joined him. "You should have woken me from my watch," she said. "Couldn't sleep anyway." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Nala spoke again. "Jesse, what happened to you? In the war, what did you do that haunts you so much?" Jesse was quiet for a long time. Then, "Sand Creek, I was there. November 1864. I was 18 years old, barely knew which end of a rifle to point. My unit attacked a peaceful Cheyenne village. Chief Black Kettle had a white flag and an American flag flying. We killed them anyway. Women, children, old men, we killed them all." His voice was flat, emotionless, the only way he could tell it. "I tried to stop it. Me and a few others. We stood between the villagers and our own men, but we were outnumbered, outranked. I saved maybe 10 people. The rest died, over 150 souls." Nala said nothing for a long moment. Then, "Is that when you deserted?" "No, I stayed another 14 years. Told myself I could do more good from inside the army. Protect people, prevent another Sand Creek." He laughed bitterly. "I was wrong. The army didn't want protection. It wanted extermination. By the time I finally left, I'd done things almost as bad as what I tried to stop. Different uniform, same evil. Yet here you are," Nala said, "trying to save my family, trying to balance the scales." "The scales don't balance, they never do. But I have to try." Nala placed her hand on his. The gesture was brief, almost formal, but Jesse felt the weight of it. Forgiveness, maybe, or at least understanding. "My father would say, you have already balanced more than you know. Your father was a better man than me. My father saved 1 life in the desert. You are saving 6. Perhaps that is how scales work, not in single acts, but in ripples spreading outward." Before Jesse could respond, Swiftbird called out softly, "Riders, coming from the northeast." Jesse and Nala were on their feet instantly, weapons drawn. Jesse counted the dust cloud. 8 riders, maybe 10, moving fast. "Crane," Jesse said. "He found us." "Impossible. I covered our trail." "He has trackers. Apache trackers probably, from the children he raised." Jesse turned to the others. "Wake up! We ride now!" They mounted in frantic haste. Kiona could barely stay in her saddle. Her fever had worsened overnight, and the infection in her leg was spreading. She needed medicine they didn't have, rest they couldn't afford. But she set her jaw and gripped the saddle horn with white-knuckled determination. They rode hard to the east, toward the Gila River and the gathering place Swiftbird had mentioned. Behind them, Crane's riders closed the distance. The pursuers had fresh horses. Jesse's group was riding animals already pushed to the edge of exhaustion. By midday, the gap had narrowed to 3 miles. By afternoon, 2 miles. They weren't going to make it to the gathering place. They weren't going to make it anywhere. Echo Valley, Jesse said. We go there now. Make our stand. Nala nodded. She turned her horse north toward a break in the rocky ridgeline that marked the valley's entrance. The others followed, though. They reached Echo Valley with Crane's men only a mile behind. The valley was exactly as Nala had described. A narrow canyon maybe 300 yards long, 80 feet from wall to wall at the entrance but narrowing to barely 20 feet at the far end. Natural choke point, perfect defensive ground, if they could hold it. Jesse dismounted and immediately began assessing positions. The canyon walls were rough stone, climbable in places. Boulders littered the floor, providing cover. A dry stream bed ran down the center, evidence of flash floods during monsoon season. And at the far end, the canyon dead-ended at a sheer rock face. Nala, take Kiona and Yazi to the back. Find cover behind those boulders. Swiftbird, you're with me. We hold the entrance. What about me? Kiona asked. Despite her fever, her eyes were clear and determined. Jesse looked at her. Can you shoot? My sister taught me. I can shoot. Then you shoot. But from cover. You're no good to us dead. They had maybe 10 minutes before Crane's riders arrived. Jesse and Swiftbird used the time to prepare. They stacked rocks across the narrowest part of the entrance, creating a low wall. They placed weapons within easy reach. Jesse counted his ammunition. 12 rounds in the Winchester, 6 in his Colt. Swiftbird had 14 rounds in his rifle. 32 bullets against at least 8 men. Maybe more if Crane had called in reinforcements. The math was bad. Nala appeared beside Jesse, her bow strung, 6 arrows in her quiver. I will take the high ground. East wall. I can cover the entrance from there. It's too exposed. It's the best position. And I am the best shot. She met his eyes. Do not argue. We do not have time. She was right, Jesse nodded. Nala scaled the east wall with the ease of someone who'd climbed since childhood. She found a ledge 40 feet up, just below the rim, where she could shoot down at anyone coming through the entrance. Jesse returned to his position behind the rock wall. Swiftbird crouched beside him, breathing hard, fear and determination warring on his young face. Have you killed before? Jesse asked. Only animals, for food. Men aren't much different. You aim center mass, you squeeze the trigger. You don't think about it until after. Jesse paused. And Swiftbird? If I fall, you run. Get Nala and the sisters out of here. Don't try to be a hero. What if I want to be a hero? Jesse almost smiled. Then you're a fool, but at least you're a brave fool. The riders appeared at the canyon entrance. There were 11 of them, more than Jesse had hoped, fewer than he'd feared. Silas Crane rode at their head on a massive roan gelding. Even from a distance, Jesse could see the cold fury on the man's face. Crane reined in 50 yards from the rock wall. His men spread out in a line behind him, rifles ready. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The desert wind whispered through the canyon. A hawk circled overhead, indifferent to the violence about to unfold. Jesse Walker, Crane called out. His voice echoed off the stone walls. I'm almost impressed. Old man with a bad heart, making it this far. But this is where it ends. Jesse stood up behind the wall, rifle in hand but not pointed. You're right. This is where it ends. You turn around and ride away, or you die here. Your choice, Bam. Crane laughed. Die? I have 11 men. You have, what, 2? Maybe 3 if that Apache girl can still hold a bow? We have the high ground. We have cover. We have nothing left to lose. Jesse's voice was hard as granite. You want these girls? You come through us, but I guarantee you won't all make it. Crane studied the canyon, his strategist's mind clearly calculating angles and odds. His eyes moved to the walls, saw Nala's position, saw the boulders at the rear providing cover for the others. His face tightened. Last chance, Walker. Send out the black feather women, and I let you ride away. You can die somewhere else. Might even make it back to that boy of yours in Texas before your heart gives out. Jesse felt something cold and dark unfurl in his chest. Crane had done his research, knew about Ethan, knew exactly where to place the knife. "My boy is none of your concern," Jesse said quietly. "Everything is my concern when it stands between me and what I want. Those girls are my property. That land is my claim. You're just a dying man who doesn't know when to quit." "Then I guess I'll die not knowing." Crane's face hardened. "So be it." He raised his hand. His men brought their rifles up. "Take them," Crane ordered. The battle began with a hail of gunfire. 11 rifles opened up at once, a rolling thunder of reports. Bullets smashed into the rock wall, sending chips of stone flying. Jesse and Swiftbird kept their heads down as the first volley passed overhead. Then Jesse rose and fired. His first shot took one of Crane's men through the shoulder, spinning him out of his saddle. His second shot hit another in the thigh. The man screamed and his horse bolted. Swiftbird fired too, but the boy was nervous. His shots went wide. "Breathe," Jesse said between his own shots. "Pick your target. Squeeze slow." Swiftbird tried again. This time his bullet found its mark, hitting a rider's horse. The animal went down hard, throwing its rider into the dirt. 3 men down, 8 left, plus Crane. Nala's arrow took the 4th. It appeared from above like a judgment from heaven, burying itself in a rider's chest. He fell backward off his horse without a sound. Crane's men scattered, seeking cover behind rocks and sparse vegetation. They'd expected an easy fight, overwhelmed by numbers. Instead, they were pinned down, taking casualties, unable to advance. "Flank them!" Crane roared. "Get around the sides!" 3 riders broke left, 3 broke right, trying to circle around the rock wall and attack from multiple directions. Jesse had expected this. He turned and fired at the left group, hit one in the arm, missed the second. The third made it past the rock wall and charged toward the rear, where Kiona, Yaji, and the horses waited, but Kiona was ready. Despite her fever, despite her infected leg, she rose from behind her boulder with a rifle Jesse had given her. She fired once. The rider jerked and fell from his saddle, a bloom of red on his chest. It was her first kill. Jesse saw her face go pale, saw her bend over and vomit. But when she straightened, the rifle was still in her hands. The right flank was having more success. They'd made it past the rock wall and were advancing on Swiftbird's position. The boy fired rapidly, panic overcoming training. His bullets went wild. Jesse swung his rifle around, shot one of the flanking riders in the leg. The man fell but kept crawling forward, pistol in hand. Shot another in the shoulder. That one stayed down. But the third rider made it through. He was young, maybe 20, with wild eyes and a gun already firing. His first shot missed Swiftbird by inches. His second would have killed the boy, except Jesse threw himself sideways, knocking Swiftbird down. The bullet meant for Swiftbird hit Jesse instead. It punched through his left shoulder, missing bone but tearing through muscle. Pain exploded white and hot. Jesse hit the ground hard, his Winchester flying from his hands. His vision grayed. The young rider aimed again, this time at Jesse's chest. An arrow sprouted from his throat. The rider made a choking sound and fell forward, dying before he hit the ground. Nala had shot him from her perch, an impossible shot at that angle, but she'd made it anyway. 7 down, 4 left, plus Crane. But Jesse was hurt badly now. He could feel blood pumping from his shoulder wound, hot and fast. Too fast. The bullet must have nicked an artery. He pressed his right hand against it, trying to slow the bleeding. But it wasn't working. Swiftbird was beside him, his young face terrified. "Jesse, don't die! Please don't die!" "Not planning on it," Jesse said through gritted teeth. "Get me behind that boulder. Need cover." Swiftbird helped him drag himself to better cover. Jesse's vision kept dimming and clearing, dimming and clearing. His heart was doing something terrible in his chest. Skipping beats, racing, then almost stopping. The combination of blood loss and cardiac failure was killing him faster than any bullet. He fumbled for the digitalis bottle. It had fallen from his vest during the impact. He couldn't find it. His hands were slick with blood, clumsy, useless. Looking for this? Nala dropped down from her perch, landing light as a cat despite the height. She held the digitalis bottle. She measured drops into her palm, held them to Jesse's lips. "Drink." He drank. The medicine hit his system, bitter and sharp. His heart steadied slightly, not much, but enough to keep him conscious. "You need to stop the bleeding," Nayla said. She drew her knife and cut away Jesse's shirt, exposing the shoulder wound. It was bad. Blood pulsed with each heartbeat. She packed it with cloth torn from her own clothes, pressing hard. Jesse grunted with pain but didn't cry out. "Can you still shoot?" Nala asked. "Not with my left arm, but I'm right-handed anyway." "Good, because they are coming again." Crane and his remaining 4 men had regrouped. They weren't charging blindly anymore. They'd learned respect. Now they advanced slowly, using cover, laying down, suppressing fire. Jesse picked up his Colt with his right hand. 6 shots left. He made them count. Shot 1, shot 2. Both hit, one in the leg, one in the shoulder. Not kill shots, but enough to take those men out of the fight. 2 men left besides Crane. Nala fired her last arrow. It took one of the remaining riders in the thigh. He went down hard. 1 man left. That man turned and ran. Crane shot him in the back for desertion. The man fell and didn't move. Then it was just Crane. The man dismounted slowly, deliberately, drew a Bowie knife from his belt. He'd run out of ammunition for his guns, or close to it. Now he was down to steel and determination. "Come on then," Crane roared. "Is this the best you've got? A dying cowboy and some squaws? I'll kill you all with my bare hands if I have to." Jesse tried to stand. His legs wouldn't support him. He'd lost too much blood. His vision was tunneling, darkness creeping in from the edges. Nala stood instead. She drew her own knife, the long hunting knife she carried at her belt, 12 inches of sharpened steel. "Nala, no," Jesse said. "Let me. I can still shoot." "You can barely breathe," Nala said. Her voice was calm. "This fight is mine now." She walked toward Crane. The sun was setting, painting the canyon walls red and gold. 2 figures met in the center of that dying light, one tall and broad, weathered by violence and time. The other, smaller but no less dangerous, carved from rage and grief and iron will. Crane struck first. He was fast for a man his size, his knife a blur. Nala twisted aside, let the blade pass within inches of her stomach. She countered with a slash at his arm, drew blood, but not deeply. They circled each other. Crane feinted high, struck low. Nala blocked, riposted, was blocked in turn. It was brutal, efficient, no wasted motion. 2 people who'd killed before and would do it again. Crane kicked dirt in Nala's face. She flinched and he lunged. His knife scored her ribs, a shallow cut but painful. She gasped and fell back. Crane pressed his advantage. He was stronger, had longer reach. He drove her back step by step toward the canyon wall. She blocked and dodged, but she was tiring. Her shoulder wound had reopened. Her movements were a fraction slower. Crane saw it. He grinned, predator sensing wounded prey. "You should have stayed hidden, girl. Should have let your father's land go. Now you'll die, just like he did." He thrust for her heart. Nala caught his wrist, twisted, used his momentum against him. Crane was bigger, but she was faster. She pivoted, drove her knee into his gut, and as he doubled over, she brought her knife down between his shoulder blades. The blade sank deep. Crane roared. He spun, trying to throw her off, but Nala held on, drove the knife deeper. Twisted, Crane fell to his knees. Blood spread across his back, dark and fatal. He looked up at Nala. "You think you've won? There are. Dozens like me. Hundreds. You can't stop them all." "I don't need to stop them all," Nala said quietly. "I just needed to stop you." Crane tried to speak again, but blood filled his throat. He choked, gasped, and fell forward into the dust. Silas Crane died as the sun touched the western horizon. His body lay in the red dirt of Echo Valley, unmourned, unremembered, except as a monster who'd finally met his end. Nala stood over him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back to Jesse. The aftermath was quiet. Kiona and Yazi emerged from their hiding places. Swiftbird helped Jesse to a more comfortable position against a boulder. Nala cleaned and dressed everyone's wounds with the medical supplies they'd salvaged. Jesse's shoulder was bad. The bullet had gone through, which was good, but the blood loss was severe. Combined with his failing heart, He was in serious trouble. He could feel his body shutting down piece by piece. The digitalis was barely keeping his heart beating. "How long do I have?" he asked Nahla as she bandaged him. "Hours, maybe a day if you rest." "Not long enough." "For what?" "To finish this, your other sisters, Winona and Ayana in Mexico, Chenoa and Tucson, they're still out there." Nala's hands paused in their work. "Jesse, you have done enough. More than enough. You've freed 3 of my sisters. You've killed the man who murdered my father. You've balanced your debt. The debt isn't balanced until all 6 of you are safe. You'll die trying." "Then I'll die trying." They stared at each other. Finally, Nala spoke. "You are the most stubborn man I have ever met." "I've been told that before." "By your wife?" "By everyone who ever knew me." Nala almost smiled. Then her face grew serious. "There is someone who can help, if we can find her." "Who?" "My aunt, Diving Hawk, Swiftbird's mother. She knows this territory better than anyone. She has allies among the Apache tribes, and she has spent 10 years building a network of people who fight men like Crane." "Where is she?" "At the gathering place, where we were headed before Crane forced us here. It is half a day's ride north." Jesse tried to calculate. Half a day there, half a day back, time to plan, time to organize a rescue in Tucson, time to track the Mexican slavers. All while his heart was trying to quit with every beat. "We rest here tonight," he decided. "Bury Crane and his men. Honor Marcus. Then at dawn, we ride for the gathering place. If Diving Hawk can help, we ask. If not, we do it ourselves." "Jesse, you cannot ride. You can barely sit upright." "I'll ride, even if I have to tie myself to the saddle." Nala shook her head, but she didn't argue further. She'd learned that Jesse Walker was impossible to move once he'd made a decision. They made camp in Echo Valley that night, built a fire, cooked the last of their rare food, tended to wounds and exhaustion, and the deep ache that comes after violence ends. Jesse sat with his back against a boulder, watching the stars emerge. His chest hurt with every breath. His shoulder throbbed in time with his irregular heartbeat. But he was alive. And while he was alive, there was work to do. Nala sat beside him. For a long time, neither spoke. Then she said, "Why do you do this? Truly, not the debt, not guilt. What drives you to destroy yourself for people you barely know?" Jesse thought about the question. Finally, he answered, "When I was a soldier, I followed orders. I did terrible things because I was told they were necessary. I watched children die and told myself it wasn't my fault. I was just following orders. And then one day I realized that's the same thing every monster in history has said. Just following orders." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I can't undo what I did. I can't bring back the people I killed or failed to save. But I can choose differently now. Every time I'm faced with violence, with cruelty, with someone in need, I can choose to act. Not because someone ordered me to, because it's right. And if that choice kills you, then at least I'll die as a man, not a monster." Nala was quiet. Then she placed her hand over his. "My father was right about you. You do have a warrior's spirit, even if your skin is the wrong color." Jesse managed a weak smile. "Your father was a wise man. He would have liked knowing you became who you were meant to be." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened. Around them, the others settled into sleep. Even Swiftbird, who'd seen so much violence in one day, finally succumbed to exhaustion. But Jesse stayed awake. Sleep felt too much like surrender, and he wasn't ready to surrender yet. At dawn, they rode north. Jesse stayed in the saddle through pure stubbornness and Nala's rope, which she'd used to tie him upright when he started to sway. Kiona rode with help from Swiftbird. Her fever had broken during the night, which was either a good sign or her body's last attempt at fighting before it gave up entirely. The gathering place revealed itself slowly. First, a thin trail of smoke on the horizon, then voices carrying on the wind. Then, as they crested a low ridge, a camp spread out below them. Maybe 40 people, mostly Apache, but Jesse saw Navajo, Paiute, even a few Mexican families. All of them refugees from Crane's violence or violence like it. They'd gathered here in this hidden canyon with its reliable water source to share information and resources. to help each other survive. A woman stood as they approached. She was maybe 50 years old, her hair streaked with gray, her face lined by worry and weather. But her eyes were sharp and clear. She carried herself like someone who'd seen everything and refused to break. Swiftbird made a sound, part sob, part gasp. He slid from his horse and ran toward the woman on legs that barely supported him. Shema, he said, the Apache word for mother. Shema, it's me, Daniel, your son. The woman's face transformed. She caught Swiftbird as he collapsed into her arms. Both of them were crying, years of separation and grief pouring out in that single embrace. Jesse watched and felt something crack in his own chest. Not his heart, though that ached too. Something deeper. The place where he kept his own losses locked away. Diving Hawk held her son for a long time. Then she looked up and saw Nahala. Nahala Silverhawk, she said. I heard your father was dead. I feared you were too. Not dead, Nayla said. Not yet. And these others? My sisters Kiona and Yazi, and this is Jesse Walker, the man my father saved 28 years ago. Diving Hawk's eyes moved to Jesse. She studied him for a long moment, and Jesse had the strange feeling she was seeing straight through him to his bones. Jesse Walker, she said, the white boy who survived. My brother-in-law spoke of you many times. He said you would return when you were needed most. I hope I'm not too late, Jesse said. You are exactly on time. Diving Hawk gestured to the camp. Come, rest, eat. Tell me what you need, and then we will see about finishing what Silas Crane started. They were led into the camp. People came forward with blankets, food, water. Gentle hands helped Jesse from his horse. Someone with medical knowledge examined his wounds and made sounds of concern. Kiona was taken to a healer's tent. Yaji was surrounded by children her own age, who folded her into their midst with easy acceptance. Swiftbird stayed close to his mother, still not quite believing she was real. And Jesse found himself sitting by a fire, a bowl of soup in his hands, while Nala and Diving Hawk spoke in low voices nearby. He couldn't hear everything they said, but he caught enough: plans for rescuing the remaining sisters, names of people who could help, routes through dangerous territory. Diving Hawk had resources, connections, knowledge built over a decade of fighting men like Crane. For the first time since leaving Devil's Rim, Jesse allowed himself to believe they might actually succeed. His eyes drifted closed. Just for a moment, he told himself, just to rest them. He'd been awake for 36 hours straight. Surely he could rest for just a few minutes. When he opened his eyes again, night had fallen. He'd slept the entire day. Nehla sat beside him, keeping watch. You let me sleep, Jesse said accusingly. You needed it, and we needed you alive. Fair trade. How long? 10 hours. Your body was shutting down. If you hadn't rested, you would have died. She paused. You still might die, but at least now you have a chance. Jesse sat up slowly. His shoulder screamed, but the pain was manageable. His heart beat irregularly but steadily. He felt weak as a kitten, but he felt something else too. Hope, maybe, or at least the possibility of hope. Did you make a plan? He asked. We made a plan. Diving Hawk knows people in Tucson. They can help us infiltrate the auction where Chenoa will be sold. And she knows Mexican authorities who owe her favors. They can help track the slavers who have Winona and Ayana. When do we leave? Tomorrow. But Jesse, you're not coming. He started to protest, but Nahala raised her hand. Listen, you have given me everything. Your strength, your skill, almost your life. But what I need now is not another warrior. I need someone to stay here, to protect the sisters I've already saved, to coordinate with Diving Hawk, to be the anchor that keeps us all connected. That's not my strength. It is exactly your strength. You've been a soldier. You know logistics. You know how to hold a position. And most importantly, my sisters trust you. Kiona and Yazi will be terrified if both of us leave. They need someone they know, someone who won't abandon them. Jesse understood what she was doing. She was giving him a mission that allowed him to contribute without killing himself. A mission that matched his failing body to what needed to be done. Part of him wanted to argue. The soldier part, the part that had always chosen action over wisdom. But another part, The part that had grown over the past days with Nala and her sisters understood she was right. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll stay. I'll hold the position. But you bring them back, Nala. All of them. You hear me?" "I hear you." She stood to leave. Jesse caught her hand. "Nala, after this is done, after your sisters are safe, what then?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Then we build something. A school maybe, like my father dreamed. A place where Apache children can learn to soar in the white man's world without losing who they are. A bridge between peoples. That's a good dream. It was my father's dream, but maybe it can be ours too." She squeezed his hand once, then was gone, vanishing into the darkness to finalize plans with Diving Hawk. Jesse sat by the fire alone with his thoughts. Tomorrow, Nala would ride into danger to save her last three sisters, and he would wait here doing the hardest thing he'd ever done, trusting someone else to finish the fight. But as he sat there, watching the flames dance and feeling his damaged heart beat its irregular rhythm, Jesse realized something. He wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in 5 years since Catherine's death, he felt part of something larger than himself, part of a family that wasn't bound by blood, but by choice and sacrifice. And maybe that was worth dying for after all. The fire in the cabin had burned low. Ethan paused in his telling, his voice grown hoarse. Sarah sat unmoving, tears tracking down her face. "He stayed," she whispered. "Even though he wanted to go, he stayed." "He did," Ethan said, "because that's what warriors do. Not the fighting kind, the other kind, the kind who know that sometimes the bravest thing is to step back and let others carry the burden." What happened next? Did Nala save the others? Ethan smiled, sad and knowing. That, dear Sarah, is where the story turns from rescue to something more. Because what they built together, my father and Nala Silverhawk and all those wounded souls at the gathering place, it became something that lasted long after they were gone. He reached for the leather charm, held it up so the firelight caught the Moonwing symbol. "This next part," Ethan said, "is about legacy, about how debts paid in blood and love and sacrifice become bridges that span generations. Are you ready to hear how it ends?" "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. Ethan nodded and began again. Ethan Walker set down his coffee cup, the ceramic making a soft sound against the wooden table. The fire had burned to embers now, casting a gentler light across the room. Outside, the December snow fell harder, muffling the world in white silence. Sarah pulled her blanket closer. "Grandpa, you said the story gets harder. I need to know. Did great-grandfather Jesse ever see his work finished?" Ethan's weathered hand touched the leather charm one more time. The Moonwing symbol seemed to pulse in the ember light, as if the ancient Apache mark held its own heartbeat. "He saw enough," Ethan said quietly. "More than he thought he deserved, less than he wanted." He took a slow breath. The final month of my father's life was the fullest he ever lived, and it began with Nala Silverhawk riding toward Tucson with a plan that shouldn't have worked. 3 days after Jesse agreed to stay at the gathering place, Nala prepared to leave for Tucson. She stood in the pre-dawn darkness. So I saw as checking her weapons and supplies with the methodical care of someone who knew mistakes cost lives. Jesse found her there. He moved slowly, his wounded shoulder wrapped tight, his heart medication measured and ready in his vest. 3 days of rest had helped, but he remained a man dancing at the edge of mortality. "You'll need this," Jesse said, holding out a leather document case. Inside were papers, carefully forged by one of Diving Hawk's contacts. "Says you're the property of James Montgomery, a Texas rancher looking to buy more household staff. It'll get you into the auction house without suspicion." Nala took the case, her fingers brushing his. "And you think I can pretend to be property?" "I think you can pretend to be anything if it means saving Chenoa." She almost smiled. "You know me too well, Jesse Walker." "Not well enough, but I'm learning." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Nala spoke. "If I don't return, you'll return. You're too stubborn to do otherwise." "If I don't return," she continued firmly, "you make sure Kiona and Yazi get the education my father wanted. You use whatever money comes from our land to build that school. Promise me." Jesse met her eyes. "I promise, but you're going to build it yourself because you're coming back." Nala nodded. Then, in a gesture that surprised them both, she stepped close and embraced him. Not long, not romantic, but the embrace of one warrior acknowledging another before battle. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder, "for giving me back my family, for becoming part of it." Before Jesse could respond, she was gone. Mounting her horse, riding into the darkness was Swiftbird and three of Diving Hawk's most trusted warriors, 5 riders heading toward Tucson and whatever waited there. Jesse watched until they vanished into the gray pre-dawn. His chest ached, but not from his heart this time, from something deeper and harder to name. Tucson sprawled across the desert like an ambitious promise of civilization. 10,000 souls, maybe more, living in adobe and wood structures that tried to ignore the harsh land surrounding them. It was the largest settlement for 100 miles, which made it perfect for men like Silas Crane to conduct business that required witnesses and the veneer of legality. The auction was scheduled for September 3rd at the Grand Hotel, Tucson's finest establishment. 3 stories of whitewashed adobe with actual glass windows and a dining room that served food on china plates. The kind of place where wealthy men gathered to discuss opportunities and seal deals over cigars and brandy. The kind of place where Apache girls could be sold like cattle and no one would question it. Nala and her companions arrived in Tucson 2 days before the auction. They separated immediately. Swiftbird and the 3 warriors would gather intelligence and secure escape routes. Nala would infiltrate the hotel as a prospective buyer's assistant. The disguise was perfect. She wore a simple cotton dress, her hair pinned up beneath a bonnet. Her features, which any Apache would recognize immediately, could pass from Mexican to white eyes that saw what they expected to see. She carried the forged documents in a small purse containing $50, enough to be taken seriously, but not enough to draw suspicion. She entered the Grand Hotel at noon on September 1st. The clerk barely glanced at her papers before assigning her a room. 3rd floor overlooking the street. Nala paid for 2 nights and climbed the stairs with her head down, playing the part of a servant on her master's business. Once in her room, she allowed herself to breathe. The auction would take place in the hotel's ballroom. She'd seen the posted notice. Private acquisition event, by invitation only, September 3rd, 7:00 p.m. The language was deliberately vague, but everyone knew what it meant. Nala spent September 2nd mapping the hotel. She moved through the halls and common areas like furniture, invisible in her servant's dress. She found the ballroom, spacious enough to hold 100 people. She found the kitchen and the service corridors. Most importantly, she found the holding rooms where merchandise was kept before being displayed. Chenoa was in the 3rd holding room. Nala caught a glimpse of her youngest teenage sister through a briefly opened door. 14 years old, so thin she looked 12, her eyes holding a blankness that spoke of trauma beyond words. 2 guards stood outside the door at all times. Nala's hands clenched, but she kept walking, kept playing her part. Patience. Her father had taught her patience. The hunter who rushed missed the shot. That night, Swiftbird found her. He climbed to her 3rd floor window after dark, moving up the exterior wall with the skill Crane had ironically trained into him. "I have found an ally," he reported in whispered Apache. "A judge named Morrison. He is staying at this hotel. Diving Hawk says he is honest, one of the few. If we can get him evidence of Crane's crimes, he might help." "Crane is dead," Nala said. "What evidence matters now?" "His network still lives. The men who worked with him. The railroad companies that funded him. If we expose them, we end more than just one man's evil." Nala considered this, then nodded. "Where is this judge?" "Room 212, 2nd floor, but he is guarded. 4 U.S. Marshals travel with him." "Then we need something he cannot ignore. Something that makes him act immediately." She pulled out the documents she'd taken from Crane's body at Echo Valley. The forged land deeds, the contracts with railroad companies, the lists of kidnapped children and their assigned Apache names versus their birth names. "Take these to the judge," Nala said, "but not yet. Wait until the auction begins. When everyone's attention is on the ballroom, you deliver these to Morrison. Tell him there's an illegal slave auction happening downstairs. Tell him the sheriff knows and is paid to ignore it. Force him to choose sides." Swiftbird took the documents. "And you?" "I'll be in the ballroom. making sure Chenoa isn't sold before Morrison arrives. How will you do that? Nala smiled, cold and dangerous. By outbidding everyone, and if that fails, by violence. September 3rd arrived with brutal heat. By 6 p.m., the Grand Hotel's ballroom was filling with men in expensive suits. Ranchers, businessmen, one railroad executive from Philadelphia. All of them here for the private acquisition event, drawn by rumors of particularly desirable merchandise. Nala entered at 6:45 p.m., still wearing her servant disguise. But she'd altered it subtly, added a shawl that could be quickly dropped, removed the bonnet so her hair, though pinned up, could be freed in seconds. Beneath her dress, she wore her traditional Apache clothing. Her knife was strapped to her thigh. 2 throwing knives were hidden in her sleeves. She was ready for either outcome. Success or violence. Possibly both. The auctioneer was a fat man in his 50s, sweating despite the evening cool. He stood on a raised platform at one end of the ballroom, beside a curtain that hid the merchandise from view. At exactly 7:00 p.m., he began. Gentlemen, welcome to tonight's exclusive event. We have assembled some of the finest domestic labor opportunities available in the territory. The curtain opened. 3 people stood on the platform, hands bound, eyes downcast. 2 were strangers to Nahala, but the third made her heart clench. Chenoa, her sister, looking so small and broken that Nala almost abandoned the plan and simply attacked. But she held herself still, waited. The first 2 were sold quickly, a woman for $150, a young man for $200. Then the auctioneer gestured to Chenoa, and now, gentlemen, something special. Apache girl, age 14, trained in household duties. Starting bid, $100. A voice from the back. 100. Another voice. 150. A third voice closer to the front. 200. The railroad executive sitting in the front row raised his hand. $500. The room went quiet. That was serious money, more than most of these men could afford for household labor. The auctioneer grinned. 500 from the gentleman in the front. Do I hear 550? Silence. Going once. Nala stood. Every eye turned to her. $1,000, she said clearly. The room erupted in murmurs. Who was this Mexican woman? Where did she get that kind of money? The auctioneer's eyes narrowed with greed. 1,000 from the lady. Do I hear 1,100? The railroad executive studied Nala, calculating. Then he raised his hand. 1,500. 2,000, Nala said immediately. The executive's face darkened. He stood, turning to face her. Who are you? I don't recognize you from any of the established families. I'm someone with money and interest. That should be sufficient. It's not sufficient. This is a private event, by invitation only. Nala drew herself up to her full height. I have invitation. Would you like to see? She reached into her sleeve as if to withdraw papers. Instead, she threw the knife. It wasn't aimed at anyone. Instead, it buried itself in the wooden platform beside the auctioneer, vibrating with the force of the throw. The message was clear. I'm armed, I'm skilled, and I'm not leaving without that girl. The room exploded into chaos. Men shouted. Some reached for concealed weapons. The auctioneer stumbled backward, and the doors at the back of the ballroom crashed open. Judge Morrison strode in, flanked by 10 U.S. Marshals, all with rifles drawn. He was 62 years old, gray-bearded, with eyes like chips of flint. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. This auction is illegal under territorial law. Everyone remain where you are. You're all under arrest for participating in human trafficking. Half the men in the room tried to run. The marshals blocked the exits. 3 men drew pistols. The marshals fired warning shots into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. The 3 men dropped their weapons and raised their hands. In the confusion, Nala moved. She leaped onto the platform, knife in hand, and cut Chenoa's bonds. Her sister stared at her with wide, disbelieving eyes. Nala, I'm here. I have you. We're leaving. But no arguments. Can you run? Yes. Then run. They ran, not toward the doors, which were blocked by marshals and arrested men. Instead, Nala dragged Chenoa toward the service corridor she'd mapped 2 days earlier. Behind them, she heard Morrison's voice. "Stop those women!" But Swiftbird appeared from the service corridor, rifle in hand. "This way, quickly!" They fled through the kitchen, past startled cooks and servers, out the back door into the alley. 3 horses waited there, held by Diving Hawk's warriors. Nala boosted Chenoa onto the nearest horse, then swung up behind her. Swiftbird mounted another. The 3rd warrior took the last horse. "The others?" Nala asked. "Already riding for the gathering place." "Whoa!" They rode hard through Tucson's streets as darkness fell. Behind them, whistles blew and men shouted, but the confusion bought them precious minutes. By the time any organized pursuit could form, they were out of town and vanishing into the desert night. They rode for 12 hours straight, pushing the horses to their limits. When they finally stopped, it was in a canyon Nala recognized, Echo Valley, where she'd killed Silas Crane just days ago. The bodies had been cleared, but the blood remained, dark stains on red stone. Chenoa slid from the horse and collapsed. Not from injury or exhaustion, though she was both. From the sudden release of tension she'd been holding for months. Nala knelt beside her, gathered her into her arms. Chenoa shook with silent sobs, her thin body convulsing. "I have you," Nala whispered. "You're safe. I have you." "I thought I would die there," Chenoa managed through her tears. "I thought you were all dead and I would die alone and no one would remember us." "We remember. Father remembers. And you will never be alone again." They stayed in Echo Valley for 6 hours, resting the horses and themselves. As dawn broke, Swiftbird returned from scouting. "No pursuit. Morrison has arrested half of Tucson's wealthy men. The rest are too busy protecting themselves to chase us." Nala felt something uncoil in her chest. They'd done it. Chenoa was free. 3 sisters now, out of 6, but 3 remained. Winona and Ayana, sold to Mexican slavers. Their trail was months cold. Finding them would require resources Nala didn't have, knowledge she didn't possess. Unless. Swiftbird, did Diving Hawk's contact in Mexico send word? Yes, the slavers took Winona and Ayana to Hermosillo. They were sold to a hacienda owner named Martin Vega. He has a reputation for treating his slaves poorly. Nala's face went cold. "How far is Hermosillo?" 2 weeks' ride, maybe 3. In Vega's hacienda? Fortified. 20 men, dogs, high walls. Another impossible rescue. But Nala had done impossible before. "We ride for the gathering place first," she decided. "Deliver Chenoa to safety. Reunite with Kiona and Yazi, then I go to Mexico." "You cannot go alone," Swiftbird protested. "I won't be alone. I'll have you and Diving Hawk's warriors, and I'll have Jesse's planning and wisdom." "Jesse is dying. Then I'll carry his wisdom with me after he's gone." They mounted and rode north, back toward the gathering place, back toward Jesse and the fragile community of survivors that had formed around Diving Hawk's strength and Jesse's steady presence. Jesse was teaching when they arrived. He sat in the shade of a ramada, surrounded by a dozen Apache children between 8 and 15 years old. In his hands he held a book, the only one they had, a worn Bible he'd carried since his cavalry days. But he wasn't reading scripture. He was teaching them to read English, using the only text available. His voice was hoarse, his face gray with exhaustion, but his eyes remained focused as he pointed to words and sounded them out. The children repeated after him, their young voices uncertain but determined. Kiona sat nearby, helping the younger ones. Her infection had finally cleared, though she walked with a limp now and probably always would. Yazi played with children her own age, teaching them a game she'd learned before her captivity. Both sisters looked up as the riders approached. Yazi saw Chenoa first. She screamed and ran, colliding with her sister so hard both nearly fell. Kiona followed, slower but no less emotional. The 3 sisters embraced, crying and laughing and speaking over each other in Apache. Jesse stood slowly, supporting himself against the ramada's post. His eyes found Nala. She nodded once. Success. Jesse's face transformed. Not quite a smile. He was too tired for that, but something close. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction at a mission completed. Nala dismounted and walked to him. Up close, she could see how much the 3 days had cost him. His skin had a gray undertone. His breathing was shallow. His hand shook slightly where it gripped the post. "You did it," Jesse said. "We did it. Your plan worked." Morrison came through? Better than expected. He arrested half the auction attendees. The investigation will destroy Crane's whole network. Jesse nodded, then his eyes moved to Swiftbird and the warriors, reading something in their expressions. "But you're not done." Two sisters remain, Winona and Ayana, in Mexico. "How far?" 2 weeks' ride, maybe more. Jesse was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I can't go with you, you know that." "I know. But I can help you plan, help you prepare, help you succeed." "Jesse, you should rest. I should use what time I have left doing something that matters." His voice was firm despite its weakness. "Your father gave me a second life. I'm not wasting it lying in a bed waiting to die." Nala studied his face, saw the determination there, saw also the truth. He had weeks at most, maybe days, but those weeks could be spent in purpose or in surrender. And Jesse Walker had never been good at surrendering. "All right," she said quietly, "then help me plan. Help me bring my last sisters home." They spent 2 days in preparation. Jesse, despite his failing body, proved invaluable. His military experience gave him insights into siege tactics, entry points, timing. He questioned every assumption, tested every plan, found weaknesses they would have missed. Diving Hawk contributed her knowledge of Mexican territory and contacts. Swiftbird and the warriors provided intelligence gathered from Mexican traders passing through. Slowly, carefully, they built a plan that might actually work. The night before Nala was set to leave for Mexico, she found Jesse sitting alone by the fire. He was writing in a small journal, his hand moving slowly across the page. "What are you writing?" Nala asked. "Letter to my son, Ethan, trying to explain, trying to say what I should have said years ago." "Will you send it?" "If I can. Diving Hawk knows someone heading toward Texas next month. They can carry it." Jesse closed the journal. "I'm telling him about you, about your sisters, about your father. I want him to know that his father's last act was something worth doing." Nala sat beside him. For a moment, they simply watched the fire. "Jesse, after this is done, after all my sisters are safe, will you—" She stopped. The question she was about to ask felt too large, too heavy. "Will I what?" Jesse prompted gently. "Will you help me build the school? My father's school, even if it's just for a few weeks, even if it's just planning and laying foundations. I want you to see it begin." Jesse looked at her. In the firelight, his face seemed younger somehow, less worn by pain and time. I'd like that. I'd like that very much." "Good. Then you have to stay alive long enough to see it. I'll do my best." They sat in silence for a while longer. Then Nala said, "Jesse, I want you to know something. When this started, you were the man who owed my father a debt. But now you're family, not by blood, but by choice. And that matters more." Jesse felt his throat tighten. "Your father would say that's the Chiricahua way, family made by choice, not chance." He would, and he would be right. The next morning, Nala rode south with Swiftbird and 5 of Diving Hawk's best warriors. 7 riders heading into Mexico to attempt what reason said was impossible. But they'd done impossible before. They'd do it again. Jesse watched them go from the Ramada, where he held his teaching sessions. Beside him, Kiona and Yazi and Shanoa stood together, 3 sisters reunited, waiting for the last 2 to come home. "Will she succeed?" Shanoa asked quietly. "Yes," Jesse said with absolute certainty. "Your sister doesn't know how to fail." The journey to Hermosillo took 8 days of hard riding through territory that changed from Arizona desert to Sonoran scrubland. Nala and her warriors moved like ghosts, avoiding federales and bandits with equal care. Diving Hawk's contacts guided them from safe house to safe house. Mexican families who remembered kindnesses from Apache traders in better times. On the 8th day, they reached the outskirts of Hermosillo. The city sprawled larger than Tucson, 20,000 souls living under the Mexican sun. And 15 miles to the east, on a hill overlooking cultivated fields, sat the hacienda of Martin Vega. Swiftbird scouted the compound first. He'd learned reconnaissance from Crane, and now he used those skills for better purpose. He returned after dark with a hand-drawn map and grim news. 22 guards, not 20, he reported in whispered Apache. High walls, 12 feet, topped with broken glass. Dogs patrol the interior at night, 4 at least, maybe more. The slave quarters are on the north side, separate building. Winona and Ayana are there with maybe 30 other captives. Nala studied his crude map by firelight. Gates? 2. Main gate on the south, heavily guarded. Service gate on the east, only 2 guards but visible from the main house. Vega himself lives in the central building with his family. His men bunk in the western structure. Weak points. Swiftbird pointed to the north wall. Here. An old cistern built into the wall. The grate is rusted. A small person could squeeze through. Uplands into a drainage ditch that runs behind the slave quarters. Nala looked at the youngest of their warriors, a 16-year-old Paiute boy named Red Cloud. Small, thin, quick. Can you do it? Red Cloud nodded without hesitation. I can fit through, but I cannot carry 2 grown women back that way. You don't need to carry them, you just need to open the door. They spent 2 more days preparing. Diving Hawk's contact in Hermosillo, an old Mexican woman who'd lost her own children to slavers, provided what they needed. Keys copied from a bribed servant, information about guard rotations, and most importantly, a distraction. On the 11th night, a fire broke out in Hermosillo's market district. Not large enough to threaten lives, but smoky enough to draw attention. 6 of Vega's guards rode into town to help, worried the fire might spread to their employers' warehouses. That left 16 guards at the hacienda. Still too many, but better odds. Nala's team struck at midnight. Red Cloud went through the cistern grate, squeezing his thin frame through rusted metal with agonizing slowness. It took him 20 minutes to reach the drainage ditch, another 10 to crawl along its length to the slave quarters. While he worked, Nala and Swiftbird approached the east gate. The 2 guards there were bored, half asleep. They never saw the arrows that took them down, swift and silent. Nala dragged their bodies into shadow, while Swiftbird took one man's uniform and hat. He walked to the gate, opened it from the inside, let the others through. 4 warriors now inside the compound, 4 against 16. But they weren't there to fight. They were there to rescue. Red Cloud reached the slave quarters and used the copied key. The lock clicked open. Inside, 30 people slept on thin pallets, exhausted from a day of brutal labor. Red Cloud found Winona and Ayana by their Moonwing tattoos, barely visible in the darkness. He shook them awake, hand over mouth to prevent screams, whispered in Apache who he was, who had sent him. Showed them Nala's knife as proof. Getting out was harder than getting in. The drainage ditch was too small for grown women. They had to go through the compound, past the main house, past the barracks, to the east gate where Nala waited. They almost made it. A dog barked, then another. Within seconds, every dog in the compound was howling. Lights blazed in the main house. Men shouted. Guards poured from the barracks, half-dressed but armed. Run, Nala screamed in Apache. Winona and Ayana ran. Red Cloud ran beside them, guiding them through shadows. But the compound was chaos now, men everywhere, dogs giving chase. Swiftbird fired his rifle, not at the guards but into the air above their heads. Drew their attention, bought seconds. One of Diving Hawk's warriors threw a torch onto the barracks roof. Dry thatch caught immediately, bright flames climbing into the night sky. In the confusion, the 5 of them made it to the east gate. Nala was there with horses, already mounted. She pulled Winona up behind her. Swiftbird took Ayana. The warrior who'd thrown the torch took Red Cloud. They rode hard for the wall. Someone fired a shot. A bullet whined past Nala's ear, close enough to feel. Another shot hit one of the horses, but not fatally. The animal kept running despite its wound. They crashed through the service gate, already opened, and vanished into the Mexican night. Behind them, Vega's men tried to mount pursuit, but the fire was spreading to the main house now. They had to choose between chasing the slaves and saving their employer's home. They chose the home. Nala's team rode for 12 hours without stopping. By dawn, they were 40 miles away. By sunset, they'd crossed back into Arizona territory. And on the 12th day, they rode into the gathering place with the last 2 sisters. 12 days later, riders appeared on the southern horizon. Jesse was lying in a cot in Diving Hawk's tent, too weak now to teach or plan or do much beyond breathing. His heart had finally begun its final surrender. The digitalis no longer helped. The medicine Diving Hawk provided only eased the pain slightly. But when Kiona burst into the tent with tears streaming down her face shouting, "They're back, they're back," Jesse forced himself to sit up. Diving Hawk tried to stop him. "You should rest. Let me bring news to you." "No, I want to see." With Diving Hawk supporting him on one side and using a walking stick on the other, Jesse made his way outside. The camp had gathered to watch the riders approach. Jesse counted them. 7 rode out, 9 were returning. Nala rode in front. Behind her, Swiftbird. Behind them, 2 young women Jesse hadn't seen before but recognized instantly. They had the same features as Kiona and Chenoa and Nala. The same dark eyes and high cheekbones. The same strength in their bearing despite obvious exhaustion. Winona and Ayana, the last 2 Black Feather sisters. Home. Nala dismounted and helped her sisters down. All 6 sisters came together in a mass of embraces and tears in Apache words spoken too fast for Jesse to follow. Reunited, finally, impossibly reunited. Nala looked up from the embrace and her eyes found Jesse. She extricated herself from her sisters and walked to him. "All 6, she said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "All 6 safe. Your debt is paid, Jesse Walker. Paid in full." Jesse felt something break loose in his chest, not his heart, though that was failing rapidly now, something else. The weight he'd carried for 21 years, the debt to Silverhawk, the guilt over Sand Creek, the failures with Catherine and Ethan, all of it suddenly lifted. He'd done enough. Finally, after a lifetime of trying and falling short, he'd done enough. "Your father would be proud," Jesse managed to say. "He would be proud of you. The man who came when called, the man who kept his promise." Jesse's legs gave out. Diving Hawk caught him, lowered him gently to the ground. People rushed forward, but Jesse waved them back. "I'm fine, just tired. Let me rest here a moment. Let me watch." So they let him rest there, propped against a post, while the camp celebrated. 6 sisters reunited. A tyrant's network destroyed. A community of survivors growing stronger every day. Jesse watched it all with dimming eyes. His heart was barely beating now. Each breath came harder than the last. But he was content. For the first time in decades, truly content. As the sun began to set, Nyala sat beside him. She didn't speak, just sat there, her presence a comfort. "I'm dying," Jesse said. Not a question, just an acknowledgement. "I know. Soon, maybe tonight. I know. I need you to promise me something. Anything. The school. Build it. Not here. Somewhere permanent. Somewhere the army can't easily reach. Use whatever comes from reclaiming your father's land. Teach the children. Bridge the worlds. Make something that lasts. I promise. And Ethan, my son, if he ever comes looking for me, tell him. Tell him his father died well. Died for something that mattered. I'll tell him, but Jesse, you should tell him yourself." Jesse smiled weakly. "We both know I won't last that long." They sat in silence as the celebration continued around them. Children laughed, food was shared, stories were told. Life continuing despite death's proximity. As full darkness fell, Jesse's breathing became more labored. Diving Hawk appeared with medicine, but Jesse waved it away. "No more, it's time." The 6 Black Feather sisters gathered around him. Kiona, Winona, Ayana, Chenoa, Yazi, and Nahla, who knelt beside him and took his hand. "Thank you," each sister said in turn. Some in English, some in Apache, all with the same meaning. Gratitude for the impossible man who'd given them back their lives. Jesse looked at each face, tried to memorize them. These were Silverhawk's daughters, and in a way they'd become his daughters too. The family he'd failed to build with Ethan, built instead with strangers who became closer than blood. "Your father," Jesse whispered to Nala. Tell him I kept the promise." "I will. When I see him in the next world, I will tell him." Jesse's eyes drifted closed. His breathing slowed. Once more, twice more, then stopped. Nala Silverhawk sat holding the hand of Jesse Walker as his spirit left his body. Around her, her 5 sisters wept quietly. Diving Hawk began a death chant in Apache. Swiftbird, who'd been saved by this man, stood with tears streaming down his face. They buried Jesse Walker the next morning on a hill overlooking the gathering place. The grave was marked with a cairn of stones and a piece of wood carved with simple words. Jesse Walker, cowboy, warrior, builder. He paid his debts and kept his promises. At the burial, Nala placed the leather charm, the one Silverhawk had given Jesse 28 years ago, on his chest before they covered him with earth. "You're free now," she whispered. "The debt is paid. Rest well, Jesse Walker. And thank you." The fire in the cabin had gone completely to ash. Only the faintest glow remained. Ethan's voice was hoarse from hours of telling. Sarah's face was wet with tears. "He never saw the school," Sarah said. "He died before it was built." "No," Ethan corrected gently. "He saw it begin, which is all any of us can hope for. To plant seeds knowing we might not see the harvest." "What happened next, after he died?" Ethan stood slowly, his old bones creaking. He walked to the mantel and withdrew a photograph in a silver frame. He handed it to Sarah. The photograph was old, sepia-toned, dated 1889. It showed a simple wooden building with a sign above the door, the Silverhawk Academy. In front of the building stood a group of people. Sarah recognized Nala from her grandfather's description. Older now, maybe 32 or 33. Beside her stood 5 other Apache women, clearly her sisters. Children surrounded them, maybe 20 or 30, all ages. And standing to one side, a young man in his 30s, white but comfortable among the Apache. He was smiling. "That's me," Ethan said. "I was 34 when that photo was taken. It was the school's first year." Sarah stared at the photo. "You went to them? After your father died?" "I did. The letter he wrote, Diving Hawk sent it to me just as he'd asked. I read it and realized everything I'd believed about my father was wrong. He wasn't absent because he didn't care. He was absent because he was trying to become someone worth caring about." Ethan sat back down heavily. "I sold everything I had in Texas and traveled to New Mexico. Found Nala and her sisters. They'd used the money from reclaiming their father's land to buy 40 acres near the Gila River. They were building the school my father had helped them plan." "And you helped them build it?" "I did more than that. I became a teacher there, taught English and mathematics and law. And Nala taught me everything else. Apache culture, history, survival. We became partners in every way that mattered." Sarah's eyes widened. "You and Nala, you were." "We loved each other," Ethan said simply. "Not immediately. It took time. Years, but yes. Eventually we married. Apache ceremony and legal ceremony both. And we ran that school together for 40 years. He reached for another photograph. This one showed the same building, but larger, expanded. 3 structures now, instead of 1. And in front, a much older Nala, her hair gray, standing beside an equally aged Ethan, surrounded by hundreds of students. "The Silverhawk Academy operated until 1923, Ethan said. Educated over 400 indigenous children. 12 became lawyers, 8 became teachers, 3 became tribal chiefs. The school closed only because the government finally started providing adequate education on reservations." "And Nala?" "She lived until 1941, 84 years old, sharp as a knife until the end. We had 3 children together. Your father was one of them, which makes you..." "What, 1/4 Chiricahua Apache?" Sarah touched the photograph with trembling fingers. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I wanted you to be old enough to understand. This isn't just a story about my father or about Nala. It's about what we build with the time we have. About how debts paid in one generation become gifts to the next." Ethan picked up the leather charm once more. The Moonwing symbol caught the last light from the dying fire. "When Nala died, she asked that this be passed down through the family. She said it represented something more than the debt between my father and her father. It represented the bridge they built between 2 peoples. A bridge that still stands." He pressed the charm into Sarah's hand. "Now it's yours, not as a relic, as a reminder. that the quiet decisions we make in private moments define who we truly are, that family is built by action, not blood, and that sometimes the greatest thing we can do is plant trees whose shade we'll never sit under. Sarah looked down at the leather in her palm, 85 years old, maybe more, worn smooth by generations of hands, but the symbol remained clear, a crescent moon with eagle wings, the Moonwing. Promise kept, bridge built, legacy passed forward. What happened to the land, Sarah asked. The Chiricahua territory your great-grandmother Nahala fought so hard to keep. Ethan smiled. It's still in the family, administered by a trust Nala and I set up before we died. It's a cultural center now. Museum, library, meeting place for the scattered Chiricahua people who remain. Your father visits twice a year to oversee it, which means someday it'll be your responsibility. Sarah closed her hand around the charm, felt the weight of it, not heavy but significant. I'll take care of it, she said, all of it. The land, the legacy, the story, I promise. Good, because that's what family does. We take care of what was entrusted to us, and we pass it forward. Outside, the snow had stopped. The world was silent and white and new. Inside, grandfather and granddaughter sat in the darkness, connected by a story 85 years old that felt as immediate as breathing. Ethan stood slowly. It's late. You should sleep. We'll talk more in the morning. But Sarah didn't move. She was staring at the photographs, at the leather charm, at the legacy she'd never known she carried. Grandpa, do you think great-grandfather Jesse died happy? Ethan considered the question. I think he died content, which is better than happy. Happiness is fleeting. Contentment is earned. And my father earned it. He spent his last month building something that outlasted him by decades. That's more than most of us can hope for. He paused at the door. Sleep well, Sarah. And tomorrow I'll show you the letters. The ones my father wrote to me from the gathering place. The ones where he talked about building the school, about Nahala and her sisters, about finding purpose after a lifetime of feeling purposeless. They'll help you understand even better. After he left, Sarah sat alone with the photographs and the charm. She thought about Jesse Walker, dying at 29 but living more in his last month than most people lived in decades. She thought about Nala Silverhawk, who lost her father but gained a family. She thought about Ethan, who lost his father young but found him again through legacy and love. And she thought about herself, 24 years old, her whole life ahead. What would she build with her time? What bridges would she construct? What debts would she pay forward? She didn't have answers yet, but she had the Moonwing charm in her hand. She had the story in her heart. And she had the understanding that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property. It's the knowledge of who you come from and what they stood for. Sarah stood and walked to the window. Outside, the New Mexico landscape stretched white and silent under moonlight. Somewhere out there, buried on a hill overlooking what had once been a gathering place for survivors, Jesse Walker's bones rested in the earth he'd died protecting. And somewhere out there, the Silverhawk Cultural Center stood on land that 6 Apache sisters had reclaimed with blood and sacrifice and the help of one stubborn cowboy who couldn't let a debt go unpaid. The past and present connected by choice, by honor, by the simple understanding that what we do echoes forward in ways we can't predict, but must trust. Sarah pressed the leather charm to her lips. Thank you, great-grandfather Jesse. Thank you, great-grandmother Nahala. I'll carry it forward. I promise. The moon hung in the window, nearly full, and for just a moment Sarah could swear she saw wings spreading from its curves. The Moonwing symbol, written across the sky. A promise kept, a bridge built, a story that would never truly end because it lived in the choices of each new generation. And somewhere in the quiet darkness, perhaps Jesse Walker and Nala Silverhawk and Chief Silverhawk all smiled. Their legacy secure, their work continued, their story told and retold until it became something more than history. It became truth. Ethan returned to the living room an hour later, expecting to find Sarah asleep. Instead, she sat by the window, still holding the charm, still looking at the photographs. Can't sleep? He asked gently. I keep thinking about them, about how much they sacrificed, how much they built. And I wonder, am I worthy of carrying this forward? Ethan sat beside her. My father asked himself the same question. So did Nala. So did I. And you know what I learned? Worthiness isn't something you're born with. It's something you earn through action. But what if I fail? Then you fail trying, which is better than succeeding at nothing. Ethan placed his weathered hand over Sarah's younger one. The Moonwing doesn't demand perfection. It demands effort, intention, the willingness to make choices based on what's right instead of what's easy. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then, tell me one more thing. How did great-grandfather Jesse's heart finally give out? What were his last words? Ethan smiled sadly. According to Nala, his last words were, "Tell Silverhawk I kept the promise." And then he closed his eyes and let go. She said it was the most peaceful death she'd ever witnessed. Like he'd been holding his breath for 21 years and finally, he could exhale. He deserved peace. He did, and he found it. Not in the absence of struggle, but in the completion of purpose. Ethan stood. Now sleep. Tomorrow we visit the cultural center. You should see what your legacy looks like in real life. After he left, Sarah finally lay down on the couch. She kept the leather charm in her hand, feeling its worn surface, trying to imagine all the hands that had held it before. Jesse as a child, receiving it from Chief Silverhawk. Jesse as a dying man, giving it back to Nala. Nala holding it through decades of building and teaching. Ethan carrying it after she died. And now Sarah, the latest in a line that stretched back nearly 90 years. As she drifted towards sleep, Sarah made herself a promise. She would be worthy of the Moonwing. She would honor the sacrifices made. She would build bridges between worlds, just as Jesse and Nala had done. She would pay the debt forward. And somewhere in the darkness, if you listen carefully, you might have heard the whisper of wind through eagle wings. The gentle approval of ancestors who'd done their part and passed the burden lovingly to the next generation. The Moonwing's flight continued and would continue, as long as there were people willing to carry the weight of honor, to act with integrity even in solitude, to plant trees whose shade they'd never enjoy. That was the real legacy, not property or money or even the school. It was the understanding that some debts are meant to be paid forward into infinity, from generation to generation, from choice to choice, from heart to heart. And Jesse Walker, cowboy and warrior and builder, had started something that would never truly end. Because that's what happens when broken people choose to build instead of break, when strangers choose to become family, when debts become gifts and gifts become legacies. The world changes, one act of kindness at a time, one promise kept at a time, one bridge built at a time, until the day comes when the bridges outnumber the walls, and the families we choose become as strong as the families we're born into. That was Jesse Walker's real triumph. Not that he saved 6 Apache girls, but that in saving them, he showed others it could be done, and those others showed more, and more after that. Ripples spreading outward from a single choice made in the desert under brutal sun. An old cowboy seeing a mark on a girl's shoulder and remembering a promise 28 years old. That was all it took. One person remembering, one person acting, one person refusing to let a debt go unpaid. And from that single act, a legacy was born that would outlast empires. The Moonwing flies eternal.